We take it as true that we have an absolute right to freedom. In Western Europe, we have that right, and it is our birthright. We are free to live where we choose, to form associations, to speak freely. It is our right to have care when we are sick, shelter when we are destitute, and learning for our young. We can buy and sell freely. We have the protection of the law and freedom to choose our rulers. It was not always so. Our ancestors fought over hundreds of years for the freedom we now have, often by fighting each other. One man's freedom was another man's oppression. These were times of great conflict and suffering, and yet we recognize that a common body of thought did evolve, and at its heart, the fuel of its progress was a great passion to be free. For all the diversity and conflict in our history, we share today as Europeans these freedoms. And there is an intellectual and cultural unity in Europe that has evolved from this past. It is what gives momentum to the evolution of European political union. A union that embraces our separate identities and diverse cultures. The story of our European past is infinitely rich in politics, in art, in science, in thought. And all of these things were done by living people, alone or together, more often in conflict and struggle. We are not and never were the product of one culture. The history of Europe begins in ancient Greece, 300 years before the birth of Christ. Pericles says, "A state confers a greater benefit when as a whole unit it is successful, rather than when it prospers as regards the individual, but fails as a community." True? We believe it is. In Greece, we see the first example of democracy. The individual and the community working together to ensure freedom for all. From the North Sea to the Sahara Desert, European civilization advances with the Roman Empire, a geographical area large enough to be completely self-sufficient, enjoying a common culture and political unity. As the centuries pass, new peoples appear, wanting freedom to cross traditional boundaries. The great barbarian tribes, the Goths, Vandals, Burgundians, Lombards, Franks are on the move. By the 7th century, a combination of Roman and Germanic traditions provide a springboard from which new ideas and concepts of freedom and expansion can be attempted. Most dramatically illustrated by the primacy of the Franks, Charlemagne and the Carolingian Empire. He was the common father of all orphans, pilgrims, widows, and virgins. Rulers become monarchs, and feudalism brings to them a political power hitherto unknown. Freedom now to expand. We see the rise of national monarchies in France, Spain, and England, determined to extend their realms of influence. Now, the passion to be free will have a price. Centuries of warfare. The energies released are not all violent. A new spirit emerges. The great European Renaissance of the 14th and 15th centuries, drawing on classical ideas, but emphatically not about repetition. The brilliance of the Renaissance in Italy sweeps away the medieval aura of certainty and knowledge. The poetry of Boccaccio, the sculptured perfectionism of Donatello, the universal genius of Da Vinci. In a different and still remarkable way, Prince Henry of Portugal, the navigator, discovers the sea route to India. The closed world of medieval Europe ends the day the ship set sail. 1492, and Columbus, financed by Spain, discovers America, driven by a vision of new territories working for Europe. In Britain, the energy released by successful and continuous wealth creation through trade gives birth to a race of inventors, contrivers, industrialists, and entrepreneurs, sowing the seeds of industrial and agricultural revolution. A passion to be free from old privilege, restraint, and monopoly. By the end of the 18th century, in 1789, the French bourgeoisie rise up and destroy the old power base. The new language is liberty, says Robespierre, to found political societies at last on the immortal principles of equality, justice, and reason. This liberation is freedom for France, but will divide Europe. Terror and war follow. 1815 may have brought an end to the war with Napoleon, but it does not end the spread of nationalism. In Italy, Mazzini, Garibaldi, Cavour enact the Risorgimento, unifying Italy's multiple states. In Germany, it is Bismarck who preaches nationalism in economics and social welfare. Every European power defines its status in terms of the size and number of its overseas possessions. As we approach our own century, new and critical elements are launched into society. Urbanization, extension of education, the growing power of middle classes, and a working class still excluded from political power. The oppression of the working class and women give rise to new movements. The vote becomes a symbol of freedom for women and for workers. With this pace of expansion, European overseas rivalry and oppression, the result is inevitable. More war. This time, the war gives frightening realism to the remark by Sir Edward Grey, British Foreign Secretary. The lamps are going out all over Europe. We shall not see them lit again in our lifetime. This conflict, with such devastation and loss of life, is called a world war. In its aftermath, for the first time, the exact meaning and indeed cost of national freedom is clear. But not clear enough. Once again, the forces of nationalism throw Europe into conflict. Arising from the ashes of defeat, a new expansionism in Hitler's Germany and Mussolini's Italy leads to another, Second World War. The freedom to expand unhindered has produced Europe's darkest years. At this war's end, Europe is in ruins. The victorious Allies meet at a conference in Yalta in 1945 to map out the division of post-war Europe. How they divide Europe becomes the boundary for a future cold conflict. In Eastern Europe, Communist Russia imposes control over reconstruction. In the West, America lends massive aid. The Marshall Plan in 1947 provides capital, raw materials, and loans to the war-damaged democracies of Western Europe. New European leaders emerge in those countries that were so recently at war with one another. These are the founding fathers of the European community, expressing the hopes of millions when they now look to cooperation as a means of achieving social progress.
Ni dans une construction d'ensemble. Elle se fera par des réalisations concrètes, créant d'abord une solidarité de fait.
It is the beginning of the European community. Within a year, 6 European nations create a new and independent body to manage collectively the transformation of their historic industrial power centers, coal and steel, the symbols of national and military strength. By past standards, this is a radical act, transcending national boundaries. To achieve economic revival has to mean the end of closed economies and protectionism. So, in 1958, the same 6 countries form a common market, free of quotas and internal duties. Says Henri Spaak of Belgium, our work will prove to be one of the greatest events of European history, of no less importance than the Revolution of 1789. these words still stand the test of time. Power is now to be expressed as economic strength, not military might, and the European community becomes a formidable economic power. The lessons of coal and steel are quickly applied to agriculture. A common policy is agreed, breaking the cycle of feast and famine and increasing productivity through a 10-year modernization plan. The growing ability between nations to cooperate in areas of vital national self-interest is fueled by success. Britain, Ireland and Denmark join this community, adding strength, adding new ideas. The new democracies, first of Greece, then of Spain and Portugal, join the community. The clear advantage for all of the drive towards union supersedes national self-interest. Jacques Delors, haunted by the spectre of Europe's decline, progresses the vision with the introduction of the single market in 1992. It brings with it 4 new freedoms: free movement of people, free movement of goods, free movement of services, free movement of capital. A single market that is strengthened by community measures to increase competition, promote growth, transform the European infrastructure and remove the gap between rich and poorer regions. An economic enterprise of enormous scale and concept. How important, therefore, to mirror this community action at the individual level. With the new treaties, all European citizens acquire new rights. Change is to be implemented at local level. For the individual come new resources to learn and to train. New protections in health, in safety, and for consumers. Increasingly, the decisions of the community are to be determined in close cooperation with the elected European Parliament. In Helmut Kohl's view, the future belongs to federalism and the sharing of central and regional power as a model for Europe of the 12 and beyond. In Margaret Thatcher's view, willing and active cooperation between independent sovereign states is the best way to build a successful European community. Radically different concepts of Europe. The great challenges confronting the European Union in the 1990s will be to build popular support for the eventual political union of Europe and to create full employment in the context of economic growth. In these matters, national political agendas reflect the community's political agenda. Economic convergence must lead to political convergence. This will be the test of the spirit of the Founding Fathers, that these great European political issues will be peacefully resolved. To the rest of the world, the European Union represents a force for peaceful evolution and a powerful economic bloc. The Union is an active partner with nations in Asia, Africa, India, and Latin America. Through the Lomé Convention and other direct programs, the Union is committed to financial assistance, economic cooperation, and the transfer of the skills that Europe herself has achieved at such high cost. European culture, thought, and enterprise, the differences we cherish and the things we share, and most of all, the passion to be free. From these sources come the will and the skill to succeed, and to succeed at a time of great worldwide change. The breakup of the communist Eastern Bloc, unrest in Russia, new emerging Central European democracies. The post-war world of the Founding Fathers is gone, but the significance of their insights and principles increase by the day. exercising a power and vision that attract a growing number of nations to the European Union. Sweden, Finland and Austria have now chosen to join the Union. And for the future, the determination of other European democracies to apply is further proof of the enduring appeal. The vision of Jean Monnet, one of the founding fathers, is today at the heart of Europe's response to the challenge of new technologies and global economic conditions. In his own words, rien n'est possible sans les hommes. Rien n'est possible sans les institutions.